Hello and welcome. This is video number 10 in a 13-part series about World War II. And in today's video, the primary focus will be on some of the turning points that began to shift the favor of World War II out of being advantage Axis powers in Germany to moving towards advantage Allied powers. So here we go. All right, so connecting back with some things that have been discussed in prior videos, when you got near the end of 1941, things looked really good for the Axis powers. Germany had control of most of Europe. Japan had just attacked the United States and had the United States a little bit out of balance. And so if you were to have had to guess at that point what was the likely outcome of this war, it might have made a lot of sense to choose the Axis side, because they looked to be in very good shape at that point. But by the end of 1942 and moving forward, the momentum would shift in favor of the Allies. And so a big part of what today's video will focus on were some of those shifts and some of those changes that were taking place to put the advantage in Allied hands. So for things that we'll look at in the video, I want to start first with the North African campaign. An important area for fighting during the war was North Africa and the Mediterranean region. And when it came to end of 1941 and moving into 1942, and Allied leaders were thinking about what needed to happen for the Allied side to be able to be victorious, it was determined that really the key to defeating Germany, because they were such a strong part of the Axis powers, and ultimately winning the war, was forcing Germany into a true two-front war. Since France was pretty well defended, and Germany didn't really have to worry about anything to the west that much, it was decided that North Africa would be the first area to really focus on and really try to punch a hole in the Axis defenses. So if you look at the North Africa region, you get midway through 1942, and Germany had won a decisive battle at Tobruk. And so that was good for them. They ended up gaining more control over a larger area of North Africa than at any point up to that point. In October in 1942, there was a decisive battle fought at El Alamein that was led by British General Montgomery. And after about 2 weeks of fighting, the Germans began to retreat. And then this would open the door for an important phase called Operation Torch. Operation Torch was a mostly American force of about 100,000 men. They were led by General Dwight Eisenhower. And by May of 1943, they had worked to defeat the Germany's Africa Corps. And so as far as fighting in North Africa was concerned, getting into the spring of 1943, Allies were basically in control of North Africa, ready to move north towards mainland Europe itself. Changing directions, Battle of Stalingrad. So I want to talk a little bit about the fight that was happening in the Soviet Union. When you look at the German invasion of the Soviet Union, you know that Germany conquered a great deal of territory very quickly when that invasion began. Despite the territory that Germany picked up pretty quickly, originally trying to take the city of Leningrad would stall out and not really be completed. Same thing would happen with Moscow. Both of those fights and kind of stall points occurred by the end of 1941. So even though the Germans stalled, they still had a lot of territory and a lot of advantage. Winter was tough for both sides, and as you know, Germany did not retreat when winter hit like other people had in the past, like Napoleon in France 100 years before. But by the summer of 1942, Germany actually chose to shift focus once again, this time going after the city of Stalingrad. Stalingrad was a major industrial center for the Soviet Union, and so Germany felt this was an important strategic point to gain control of. So one thing to take note of, in this invasion of the Soviet Union, they went after major cities, and each time they seemed to get stopped before they could fully take it, and then they would move on to something else. So if you want to question some of the decisions made with the fight against the Soviet Union, I think that's an interesting place to spend some time. What might have made the difference had they waited until they actually completed one of these tasks before moving on to something else? Nevertheless, stalling out in Leningrad, stalling out in Moscow, now moving on to Stalingrad in 1942. So the battle for the city began in August of 1942. This was an important city for the Soviet Union. It was named after the Soviet Union's leader Stalin, and in that it was somewhat more important to him than maybe other things that the Soviet Union might defend. And so it was determined that the city would be defended at all costs. Literally, the city would be defended until the very last person alive was there to defend it. By November, so a couple of months into this fight, about 90% of the city was controlled by Germany. Another winter hit, and this is when the Soviets tried to stage a counterattack to try to trap Germans that were in the city. Hitler, like Stalin, ordered his men to fight for the city no matter the cost. And so this fight would continue a while longer. Now, the last thing I want to speak to in today's video was the invasion of Italy. Even though Stalin desperately wanted other Allied countries like England, like the United States, to invade France, the next area of focus for primarily American and British forces was the country of Italy. This would begin in July of 1943. Sicily, an island in the Mediterranean, was liberated first, which actually led to Mussolini being taken out of power in Italy. The Italian king, Victor Emmanuel III, who a couple of decades before had actually granted Mussolini power, now had him arrested. Italy would actually surrender to the Allies on September 3rd, 1943. Despite the fact that Italy itself surrendered, Germany wasn't having it. And Germany would actually intervene and attempt to maintain control of northern Italy and actually restore Mussolini to power. So even though Italy was prepared to surrender and ready to surrender, Germany wasn't going to let that happen, at least not at this point. So fighting would end up actually continuing in Italy for a couple of more years. June of 1944 would see the Allies take control of the city of Rome, but fighting, mostly from German soldiers, would end up continuing to represent a resistance to giving up Italy until Germany itself would actually surrender completely in the war in the spring of 1945. Now that's where I want to leave it for the video today. So these are just some steps towards turning the favor of the war on the side of the Allies out of the hands of the Axis powers. Hopefully you found this helpful and informative. Thanks for watching.